नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। इतिपिसो भगवारहं सम्मा संबुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरिसदम्म सारथि सत्ता देव मनुष्याणां बुद्धो भगवाति। नमो तस्स सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा। ये च बुद्धा अतीता च ये च बुद्धा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये बुद्धा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं गण्यं बुद्धो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमंगेन वन्देऽहं पादपंसो वरोत्तमं। बुद्धेयो कलितो दोषो बुद्धो कमतु तं मम। बुद्धं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। स्वाख्यातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दीपिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको अपनायको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्नोहीति। नमो तस्स नियानिक सदम्मसा। ये च धम्मा अतीता च ये च धम्मा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये धम्मा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं गण्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं धम्मं च विदुत्तमम्। धम्मेयो कलितो दोषो धम्मो कमतु तं मम। धम्मं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो। यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अट्टपुरुष पुद्गल एषा भगवतो सावक संगो। आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकस्साति। नमो तस्स अट्ट अर्य पुद्गला महासंगस्सा। ये च संगा अतीता च ये च संगा अनागता पच्चुपन्ना च ये संगा अहं वन्दामि सर्वदा। नत्ति मे शरणं गण्यं संघो मे शरणं वरं ये तेन सच्चवज्जेन होतु मे जयमङ्गलम्। उत्तमङ्गेन वन्देऽहं संगं च विदुत्तमम्। संगेयो कलितो दोषो संगो कमतु तं मम। संगं यावनिब्बानपर्यन्तं शरणं गच्छामि। विपत्ति पटिवाहाय सब्ब संपत्ति सिद्धिया सब्ब दुःखं विनाशाय सब्ब भयं विनाशाय सब्ब रोगं विनाशाय भवेदीगायुकदायक सब्ब लोकं हितताय परितं तं वनामहे। समन्ता चक्रवालेषु अत्ता गच्छन्तु देवता तद्धम्मं मुनिराजसा सुनन्तु सद्गमोक्तदं। धम्मस्सवන कालो अयं वदन्तः धम्मस्सवन कालो अयं वदन्तः धम्मस्सवन कालो अयं वदन्तां। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा। एवं मे सुतं एकं समयं भगवा सावत्यं विहरति जेतवने अनाथपिण्डिकस्य आरामे। तेन कोपन समयेन आयस्मा गिरिमानन्दो आबाधिको होति दुःखितो बाल्यगिलानो। अतको आयस्मा आनन्दो येन भगवा तेनुपसङ्कमि उपसङ्कमित्वा भगवन्तं अभिवादयित्वा एकमन्तं निसीदि एकमन्तं निसीन्नो को आयस्मा आनन्दो भगवन्तं एतदवोच। आयस्मा बन्ते गिरिमानन्दो आबाधिको होति दुःखितो बाल्यगिलानो। साधु बन्ते भगवायेन आयस्म गिरिमानन्दो तेनुपसङ्कमतु अनुकम्पम् उपादायाति। सचेको त्वं आनन्दा गिरिमानन्दस्य भिक्खुनो दशसन्न्याभासय्यासि तानं कोपनेतं विज्जति यं गिरिमानन्दस्य भिक्खुनो दशसन्न्यासुत्वा सो आबादो तानसो पटिपसंवय्या। कतमादशा अनिच्च संज्ञा अनत्त संज्ञा अशुभ संज्ञा अधीनव संज्ञा पहान संज्ञा विराग संज्ञा निरोध संज्ञा सब्बलोके अनविरत संज्ञा सब्बसंकारेषु अनिच्छा संज्ञा अनापनस्सति। कतमा चानंद अनिच्च संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा इति पठि संचिक्कति रूपं अनिच्छं वेदना अनिच्छा संज्ञा अनिच्छा संकार अनिच्छा विज्ञानं अनिच्छन्ति इति इमेषु पंचसु उपादानस्कन्धेषु अनिच्छानुपस्सी विहरति अयं उच्यतानन्द अनिच्छ संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द अनत्त संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा इति पठि संचिक्कति चक्षु अनत्ता रूप अनत्ता सोतं अनत्ता शब्द अनत्ता घनं अनत्ता गंध अनत्ता जिह्वा अनत्ता रस अनत्ता काया अनत्ता पृथब्बा अनत्ता मनो अनत्ता धम्म अनत्ताति इति इमेषु चसु अज्जत्तिक बाहिरेषु आयतनेषु अनत्तानुपस्सी विहरति अयं उच्यतानन्द अनत्त संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द अशुभ संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु इममेव कायं बुद्धं पादतला अधोके समत्तक तचपर्यन्तं पूरं ज्ञानपकारस्य अशुचिनो पच्चवेक्षति अत्ति इमस्मिन् काये केसा लोमा नखा दन्ता तचो मांसं अहरु अत्ति अत्तिमञ्जं वक्कं हृदयं यकनं किलोमकं तिहकं पप्पासं अन्तं अन्तगुणं उदर्यं करीसं चित्तं संहं उब्बो लोहितं सेदो मेदो अस्सु वसा केलो सिंगाणिका लसिका मुत्तन्ति इति इमस्मिन् काये अशुभानुपस्सी विहरति अयं उच्यतानन्द अशुभ संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द आदीनव संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा इति पठि संचिक्कति बहुदुःखो को अयं कायो बहु आदीनवो इति इमस्मिन् काये विविधा आबाधा उपपज्यन्ति शय्यतिदं चक्षुरोगो सोतरोगो गहनरोगो जिह्वरोगो कायरोगो शीसरोगो कण्णरोगो मुखरोगो दन्तरोगो वट्टरोगो कासो सासो पिनासो दाहो जरो कुच्चिरोगो मुच्छा पक्कंडिका शूला विसूचिका कुट्टं गंडो किलसो सोसो अपमारो दड्डु कंडु कच्चु नटसा वितच्चिका लोहितं पित्तं मधुमेहो अंसा पीडका बगंडला पित्त समुत्थान आबाधा सिंह समुत्थान आबाधा वात समुत्थान आबाधा सन्निपातिका आबाधा उतुपरिणामजा आबाधा विस्म परिहारजा आबाधा उपक्रमिका आबाधा कम्म विपाकजा आबाधा शीतं गुणहं जीगच्छ पिपासा उच्चारोपस्सावोति इति इमस्मिन् काये आदीनवानुपस्सी विहरति अयं उच्यतानन्द आदीनव संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द पहान संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु उत्पन्नं कामवितक्कं अधिवासेति पजहति विनोदेति व्यन्तीकरोति अनभावं गमेति उत्पन्नं व्यापादिवितक्कं आदिवासेति उपजहति विनोदेति व्यन्तीकरोति अनभावं गमेति उत्पन्नं विहिंसा वितक्कं आदिवासेति पजहति विनोदेति व्यन्तीकरोति अनभावं गमेति उत्पन्ने पापके अकुशले धम्मे नादिवासेति पजहति विनोदेति व्यन्तीकरोति अनभावं गमेति अयं उच्यतानन्द पहान संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द विराग संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा इति पठि संचिक्कति एतं संतं एतं पणीतं यदिदं सब्ब संकार समतो सब्बू पदिपटिनिसग्गो तन्हाक्कयो विरागो निब्बाणन्ति अयं उच्यतानन्द विराग संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द निरोध संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा इति पठि संचिक्कति एतं संतं एतं पणितं यदिदं सब्ब संकार समतो सब्बू पदिपटिनिसग्गो तन्हाक्कयो निरोधो निब्बाणन्ति अयं उच्यतानन्द निरोध संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द सब्बलोके अनविरत संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु ये लोके उपादानचेतसो अधिष्ठानाभि अभिनिवेशानुस्सयाते पजहन्तो विहरति अनुपादीयन्तो अयं उच्यतानन्द सब्बलोके अनविरत संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द सब्ब संखारेषु अनिच्छा संज्ञा इदानंद भिक्खु सब्ब संखारेषु अट्ठीयति हरायति जीगुच्छति अयं उच्यतानन्द सब्ब संखारेषु अनिच्छा संज्ञा कथमाचानन्द आनापानस्सति इदानंद भिक्खु अरण्यगतो वा रुक्कमूलगतो वा शून्यागारगतो वा निसीदति पल्लङ्कं आभुज्जित्वा उजुङ्कायं प्रणिधाय परिमुखं सतिं उपट्टापेत्वा सोसतो वा सस्सति सतोपसस्सति दीगं वा सस्सन्तो दीगं असस्सामीति पजानाति दीगं वा पसस्सन्तो दीगं पसस्सामीति पजानाति रसं वा असस्सन्तो रसं असस्सामीति पजानाति रसं वा पसस्सन्तो रसं पसस्सामीति पजानाति सब्बकाय पटिसं वेदि असस्सामीति सिक्खति सब्बकाय पटिसं वेदि पसस्सामीति सिक्खति पस्सं भयं काय संकारं असस्सामीति सिक्खति Passang Bayan Kaya Sankarang Passasissami Sikkati. Piti Patisam Vedi Assasissami Sikkati. Piti Patisam Vedi Passasissami Sikkati. Sukapatisam Vedi Assasissami Sikkati. Sukapati samvedi passasissami sikkati. Chitta sankara pati samvedi assasissami sikkati. Chitta sankara pati samvedi passasissami sikkati. Passang bayang chitta sankarang assasissami sikkati. Passang bayang chitta sankarang passasissami sikkati. Chitta pati samvedi assasissami sikkati. Chitta pati samvedi passasissami sikkati. Abhipamodayang chittang assasissami sikkati. Abhipamodayang chittang passasissami sikkati. Samadahang chittang assasissami sikkati. Samadahang chittang passasissami sikkati. Vimochayang chittang assasissami sikkati. Vimochayang chittang passasissami sikkati. Aniccanupassi assasissami sikkati. Aniccanupassi passasissami sikkati. Viraganupassi assasissami sikkati. Viroganupassi passasissami sikkati. Virodanupassi assasissami sikkati. Virodanupassi passasissami sikkati. Patinisyagdanupassi assasissami sikkati. Patinisyagdanupassi passasissami sikkati. Ayang ucchatananda anapanasati sachekotpangananda gidimananda sabikuno imadasa sanyabasayasi tanam kopane tangujjati yang gidimananda sabikuno imadasa sanyasutvaso abado tanaso patipasambayati atako ayasmanando bhagavato santike imadasa sanya udgahetva yena ayasma gidimanando ten pasankamitva ayasmato gidimanandassa imadasa sanyabasi Atako ayasmato girimanandassa dasa sanyasutvaso abado thanaso patipasambe uttahi chayasma girimanando tamha abada tatapahi nocha panayasmato girimanandassa so abado ahositi etena saccavajjena sutino hot sabpada etena saccavajjena hot no jaya mangalam etena saccavajjena hot no ratanatayan sabithyo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinasatu Mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi digayuko bhava bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhave sabba dhammanubhave sabba sanganubhave sada sotti bhavantu te vina punyakam vina mame bala samagamo satan samagamo hotu yavan vanapatya idanme punyakam asavakayam hotu Sabba dukta pramuchatu nibbana sampacchayo hotu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So this chanting is one sutta, is Girimananda Sutta. So this sutta is it is it's about why I have selected this sutta for this topic, for this today's topic. Today's topic is about, it's all about the anxiety, the stress, the depression that arises in the mind. It's all about these mental health issues like anxiety and depression. But here Buddha talks about the role of understanding, the role of perception, the role of sanya in handling these mental health issues like this stress aspects of the mind, like your anxiety, like your depression. And he says in this sutta, these are the cause for the physical health issues also. If we don't have clarity, clear perception about what is happiness, what is suffering. And there are so many aspects of right perception. There are 10 aspects of right perception. If you understand these 10 aspects of right perception, right grasping, right identification of what is true, what is not true, what is beneficial, what is not beneficial, what is required, what is not required. If that kind of clarity, if you don't have, then you end up in all these mental health issues and also the physical health issues, physical problems, the health problems, both mental health problems and the physical health problems. They are rooted in your understanding towards what is happiness, what is beneficial, what is good, what is true, what is untrue. If these things, if they are not clear, then you end up in all these health issues. So this we will see at the end of the discourse, because we can connect this discourse to the topic that we are going to discuss today. At the end of the discourse, we will connect this discourse, uh, this chanting with our today's topic. Now coming to our topic, today's topic, the significance of this topic. The coordinators, they took a lot of efforts to reach many people again and again. They are sending messages in the same groups. I don't know whether they have sent it to other groups, other social media platforms, but they are sending it again and again here only in the CRVM groups. It's okay. Now, the relevance of this topic, the significance of this topic is also important, that we should see just for a couple of minutes. And then we'll understand these two terms. What is this anxiety? What is this depression? And that very understanding of these two terms will give us some idea about the causes for this, some idea about the different cures, the treatment, the handling of this anxiety and depression. We'll get some idea. Then we will see the authoritative approach, the right view approach to handle this anxiety and depression. That's about today's discourse. So now coming to the significance, the importance of this mental health issues like this anxiety and depression. How significant is mental health issues? Especially now, after this pandemic. And of course, during this 21st century, this has become a problem. Mental health has become a problem. Why this has become a problem now? The so-called modern world, 21st century, modern world, give the people with a lot of intellectual superiority now, and lot of comforts, midst of so many comforts. But the world is actually is suffering from it. Is facing this problem of anxiety, stress, depression. This is because of imbalance. We have lost the balance between what? Between body and mind, and again between the different components of the mind. Those things, of course, we will see when we start discussing about the right view solutions. So they say nearly 40% of the people, they're affected by anxiety, stress, and depression in the world. Of course, all of us, we have to go through some phase in the life. We have to go through some anxiety, some level of anxiety, some level of depression, some level of fear, some level of worry, stress. But if it exceeds one basic level, then it's become an issue. It's a mental health issue. It becomes a mental health issue. If it is there now and then, it's okay. That's how the life is. The human world is, of course, is always affected by this stress and anxiety and depression. That's how this very design of this human world is. But if it exceeds some level, some basic level, then it becomes an issue. Then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes a mental ailment, and it becomes a physical ailment also. And it will affect many of our say our relations, our working style, our communication, Of course, it will have an impact on our thinking style also, our attitude, our behavior, our mentality. Everything will be affected. If it is not understood, if it is not handled, if it is not treated properly, these issues of anxiety and depression, it will lead to some kind of disorders. It will have some permanent impact, some permanent, say, negative impact on all aspects of the family, with in the profession, social life, everywhere it will have a permanent impact, negative impact. It will maybe it become very difficult also to come back to make it irreversible. To make it reversible, it may become irreversible problem. So that is the significance of these mental health issues today all over the world, even in the so-called developing countries also. It has become an issue now, and especially after the pandemic. People went through a different kind of say lifestyle, different kind of problems. They had to face the loneliness. They had to face say being with the same people all the time. That also created a lot of stress. Being lonely also created a lot of stress and anxiety, and it has the impact on the economy, impact on professional life. All these things led to this kind of anxiety and depression. In that way, so of the post-pandemic time, now also it has become an important aspect, a significant thing to work upon to fix this kind of. It's not exactly fixing, handling, managing, treating this anxiety and depression has become very significant, become very crucial. It's need of the hour. So in that way, the organization goes. There are so many factors. Now we will come to the different causes for this anxiety and depression. Then once you start knowing the causes, then you will understand the significance of this anxiety and depression, mental health issues also. And before just start knowing about these causes for this anxiety and depression, let us define this. Let us understand this. What exactly is anxiety? What exactly is depression? In simple terms, they say, of course, the doctors, the renowned doctors, and the people who are working on this mental health. So, in simple terms, they say anxiety is, say, high energy levels, the high negative energy levels in the mind, and of course, that will be expressed in your behavior, in your activities also. The high negative energy levels. So that is anxiety, and the low positive energy levels. The low positive energy levels, and the mind becomes like say numb. It becomes despirited, completely lacking motivation, absent-mindedness, hopelessness, nervousness, hopelessness, demotivation, dullness, and complete lack of confidence. So that kind of low energy levels, low positive energy levels, that is what they define it as the depression. But fortunately or unfortunately, both of them are interconnected. They are cyclic and also they're interconnected. They say the people who are suffering from anxiety, they have very high chances of falling into depression. And the people who are into this depression mode, they have very high chances of falling into anxiety. So all these see this, when there is a high, then automatically there is a low. When there is some kind of negative excitement or negative high, because of fear, because of worry, mind becomes little excited, we feel say hyped with energy, negative energy, then there is a higher chance of falling into the depression also. They say 50% of the cases, either anxiety cases or the depression cases, they go through this cyclical say movement of this anxiety and depression. They fall into both the categories. They fall into both these extremes. So falling into these extremes of higher negative energy or very low positive energy. So this will follow this pattern of this cyclic pattern. That's the reason why I just combined these two say psychological conditions, mental conditions, and then discussing about the causes for this, and then the cures, the treatment, the management, the therapy, the fixing of this in different ways. There are again 3 ways of fixing this anxiety and depression. We will see all these 3 kinds of fixing this problem or handling this problem. And now let us see the causes for this anxiety and depression. See, so you can remember the 3 main causes for this anxiety and depression. Ahara, the food, the inputs, especially in the form of the edible inputs that we will see. The different kinds of foods, they have an impact on your stress levels, on your anxiety levels to some extent. May not be to a great extent, but to some extent, the food has, the inputs have some impact on your the stress levels, the fear and worry levels in the mind, and the anxiety levels, the depression level of the mind. Because food, of course, the different kinds of food, they have different kinds of chemicals. So the different chemical, of course, the body also produces different kinds of chemicals. Your brain, your endocrine system, your hormones, all of them are chemicals. If there is some coherence in the foods that you take with these different chemicals that your body produces, then, and if it is a positive coherence, then you will be peaceful, then you will be calm and stable and composed. And if there is some friction, if there is some conflict between the chemicals that you feed to your body through the food and the chemicals which are supposed to be produced in the body, the right chemicals are supposed to be produced, if there is a conflict or friction in these 2 kinds of chemicals, which are food, which are actually taken from outside, and those which are supposed to be produced by the body, if there is no coherence, if there is no congruence, then you may end up in the disturbance in the mind. That's the wrong chemicals will be produced in the body, the wrong hormones, the stress hormones, or the wrong hormones may be produced in the body. Then you may end up in say this anxiety or depression. There's something called stress hormones, there is something called happy hormones. The production of these things, they are actually influenced by whatever food you take. Again, extremes of these stress hormones or happy hormones, again they create anxiety and depression. Even the happy hormones, if they become too much, they also produce some kind of stress, some kind of anxiety, some kind of depression. The same way the stress hormones also produced in the body, and they also lead to stress, anxiety, and depression. So the extreme production of these hormones and chemicals, they lead to this kind of anxiety and depression. And this production of the hormones, they're influenced by the foods that we take. So we will see what kind of foods are more suitable to handle the stress, to calm down the stress levels and anxiety levels, and then thereby the depression levels also. So in the next aspect, that is when we start talking about the cures or the treatment aspects of this anxiety and depression. So the foods have an impact on your stress, your anxiety and depression. That is one aspect. That is one of the causes. Then that is ahara, we can say. Then vichara. Vichara means your mindset, your mentality, your attitude, your mindset. So because of so many factors, like the people around you, even the congenital, even your the genetic reasons or the hereditary reasons. Some people are so high, they are highly reactive, highly sensitive, highly negative. Such kind of people, if a small thing, highly impatient. A small change in say whatever they are expecting and in whatever they are getting, then they can't bear it. That kind of patience levels, that kind of tolerance levels will not be there because of their reactive nature. So that kind of mentality, the people with that kind of overreactivity or hyperreactivity, such people, they are more prone to stress. The people who are having some composed, mindset, who are having patience, who are having, persistence or in their, in thinking or in their reactions, such people, they are less prone to the anxiety and stress. So this mentality is affected by so many other factors also. Your genetic, your hereditary factors, the parents, how they have this kind of composure, or whether they are hyperreactive, or whether sensitive or not sensitive. Too much careful or carelessness, all these things come under the mindset. So the neurological factors also, they talk about something called the neurological factors. It will affect that will come from the parents, hereditary, and also from the karma. Whatever the previous actions, previous mindset, that will have an impact on the present life or present day mindset also. Whatever you give, you get back. If you are hyperactive previously, that kind of hyperactive you can see now also. Hyperreactive, hyperactive. So all those things, the karma aspects or the mind aspect or the spiritual aspect, we will see little later. Now, just for you to remember the three causes. One is the ahara, then is the vichara, your mindset. Your mindset depends on so many factors, neurological factors, hereditary factors, lifestyle also have an influence on your thinking, on your mentality. In that way, that is actually the main reason. Your mindset, your mentality, that is the main reason for the anxiety and the depression that people have to face, that people have to go through. Then coming to the vihara means like your environment, your lifestyle, all these things, they come under vihara. Ahara, vichara, vihara. These three things we can do. So vihara means like so the other extraneous factors, other than food, other than your intrinsic, the mentality or your mindset, the other factors like your exposure, your association, your environment, the weather conditions, your profession. If you are, say, in a very congested place, then you are definitely, there are higher chances of undergoing anxiety. The pressure you experience. It's not just the physical pressure because of the congestion, even the mental pressure because of the exposure from the people who are having that pressure in the same vicinity, in the vicinity, in the surroundings. If such kind of people are there, maybe in your workplace, in your family, and your habits. And of course now people are moving away from the nature. So because of urbanization and because of the pressure for the survival. So because of so many reasons, so there is some pressure, both physical pressure, pressure for the worldly requirements, basic needs, the physical needs, and the pressure for the mental needs. Like like one has to promote oneself, one has to show his power position, his significance, his importance, one has to show. So because of that, there is a lot of competition, which is again one we can see in the professions, in the social group, in all kinds of social life, economic life also, to show off how superior they are in their financial conditions or in their monetary power. So all these things, your habits, all these things will come under what is called this vihara, your surroundings, your influences. What kind of influence, what kind of say positive influence or negative influence you have around you. These things they come under vihara. So these ahara, vichara, vihara. So these are the three aspects that we can see, which are the main reason for the anxiety and our depression. So if these three things, if they are very much dominated by the negative things, negative food habits, negative mindset, the mentality, and the negative influences, extraneous influences, external or environmental influences of the people, of the nature, the physical conditions, and also the extraneous mental conditions. They come under this vihara. So if it is negative, then definitely you undergo anxiety and depression. So in all these three things, so the anxiety, the negative, higher negative energy in you, that is anxiety, it is mainly because of the two, say, again, the mental issues, or say the two defilements, mental defilements, mental cancers, that is the fear and worry. When there is pressure in the form of negative chemicals in the food, and there is pressure in your mindset because of your negative thinking or negative mindset. When there is negative pressure, both the physical pressure and the mental pressure from the surroundings, from the environment. So these pressures will be expressed in the form of fear and worry. So I can say fear and worry is the cause of anxiety. So fear and worry is mainly it is rooted in, again, of course, the detail we will see in the last aspect of today's discourse when we talk about these right view solutions. So when you start analyzing, when you start understanding this anxiety, so the higher negative energy, so higher negative energy in the mind, the negative thinking in the mind, that because of negative thinking it becomes negative energy. That negative thinking, the source is fear and worry. And again, if you see the source of fear and worry is our attachment and our desires, our compulsive desires and our compulsive attachment. So this is the cause for the fear and worry also. Desire leads to fear. Desire and fear, they go together. Then without desires, how to live? Everything we start desiring, because of desire only we work. That's what we think. But no, that is wrong actually. Many people who are working efficiently, they are working not with desire, actually with the opposite of desire. They are working with an intention, with an attitude of how best they can give, how best they can say perform. With the giving spirit only the people work. That's why they are peaceful, they are free from all these mental issues, they are successful. So many people, most of the people, they think out of desire only people work. No, just the desire may be one goal or one aspiration. And after that, one thought of getting something, then they completely plunge into the giving mode, the working mode. The working mode, always your mind will be in the giving mode. How best I can perform this work, how efficiently I perform this work. There always the giving mode of the mind will work, not this craving mode or having mode. So in that way, if you are simply in this craving mode or having mode or this desiring mode or attachment mode, then you will not change from that craving mode or having mode to the giving mode or working mode. Then you end up in the repeated negative thoughts only. And those things only will lead to the fears, the insecurity and the fears. Fear of failure and the fear of death, these are the two major fears. That's again we see in the world, today's world. The fear of failure, again you lose your existence, your ego will be lost when you fail. So that's why you don't want to give up that ego. So that's where the root cause is. So you can't give up that ego, that attachment to myself. So that leads to what is called this fear of failure. And then fear of death, you don't want to give up this body. You are so attached to this body, that attachment, that craving, the desire to the body. So, say rigid attachment, so gross attachment to the body, that is fear of death. So this kind of fear of death, fear of failure, they lead to all the kinds of fears. And those fears, of course, they lead to the worries also. So of course, the root is the ego of minus and minus. My body, my power, my intelligence, my goodness. If these things are, say, affected, then automatically different kinds of fears, different kinds of worries will start. And these things, when they are uncontrolled, when they go uncontrolled, then they become anxiety. Okay. And when that anxiety, when it is, say, when it reaches some high, then automatically, when the body and the mind get, say, tired with that anxiety, then automatically it will fall into low. Mind will fall into low, and that is what is depression. Completely lacking energy, completely lacking all kinds of motivation, completely unfocused, you can't concentrate on anything. So in that way, we will fall into this trap, this cyclic change from anxiety to depression and anxiety. So we will fall into this trap. When this fear and worry, they go uncontrolled. When our attachments and our desires to our goodness, our intelligence, or to our ego, or to our body, if it is not understood, if it is not properly handled, then the desires and attachments, they go uncontrolled. If they go uncontrolled, fear and worry also, they go uncontrolled. Fears and worries also, they go uncontrolled. And these fears and worries, if they go uncontrolled, then the anxiety also will go uncontrolled. So this anxiety, uncontrolled anxiety, will automatically take you to depression. When this increased negative energy, if it reaches some level, automatically the mind and the body can't bear that negative energy. Then you fall into completely the low state of mind, very unspirited, highly demotivated. So that state of mind, the mind has become completely dull, completely unfocused. So that state of mind to fall into, and from there, all these suicidal thoughts, the self-worth, you don't feel the self-worth in living, or in your life, or in your personality, you completely will going to miss it, and then the suicidal thoughts will come. The self-esteem, self-worth will go away, and all these suicidal thoughts will come. In that way, so this kind of chain, which starts from this uncontrolled attachment, uncontrolled desires, And again, of course, the desires and attachment is not wrong. All these things are not wrong. Not understanding them properly is the wrong thing. So understanding the desires, understanding the and how skillfully it can be substituted, it can be handled. If that understanding lacks, then all these things will multiply, and it leads to this kind of say skewed problems, mental problems. They become intense, and it leads to all these kinds of mental problems. And again, if they go uncontrolled, then it will have an impact on the physical health also. Too much anxiety, too much depression, it leads to sleeplessness, it leads to imbalance in the functioning of the different internal organs, like your heart, like your digestive system, like your all the functions, all the endocrine system, functions of the liver, functions of the pancreas, all systems inside. After all, balance is health. If you lose balance in the mind by falling into these extremes, then the body also, especially the internal systems, internal organs, internal systems, they lose balance, and you end up in health issues also. That way, not understanding this, the nature of the mind, the nature of the desire, the nature of say attachment, not understanding, that leads to all these problems. That is the main cause. That's why I chanted this today's Sutta, Girimananda Sutta. There Buddha talks about 10 kinds of right understanding, right perception about what is what. Where is happiness? So understanding that everything is changing, everything is impermanent, anicca sanya. Body is changing, mind is, our feelings are changing, our intelligence, our say our perception is also changing. Our sankara means our reactions, our intentions are changing. So why should we hold on to these changing intentions, changing feelings? So that kind of everything is changing. That understanding, even the circumstances are changing, even the people are changing. Each and everything is changing. The same person who is hating me, tomorrow he may love me. He may looks very, very antagonistic, very, very say threatening, very, very scary. That may change very next moment. It may become very, very supportive. That's how the nature is. That understanding of the impermanence, or everything is changing, or this will also pass away. So that understanding, if you don't have, then you're stuck with the permanence, move from permanence idea. Oh, this fear, or this danger, or this suffering, it will remain always. This pain will remain always. This enemy, he may remain always as an enemy. That kind of perception is there in your mind. The perception of permanence is there in your mind. Then the fears will multiply. The anxiety will multiply. Then automatically depression also will increase. So when you know this situation also will change. This will also pass away. Let it be, let go. If that attitude, if you don't cultivate, let go. What next? Let go. So what? What next? These are all the modern day mantras. Now slowly we are turning towards the treatment, the handling of this, the cures for this, the different causes of anxiety and depression. Now we have started moving to this cures, the opposite of these causes. So once you thoroughly understand the causes is like, say, something like this. Permanently you are thinking that it will not change. So when you start understanding that everything is changing, this will also pass away. You can use these things as mantra. This will also change. This will also pass away. This situation also will pass away. This person also will pass away. If it is very, very exhilarating, very, very joyful situation, the mind should learn this will also pass away. And it is very boring, very disappointing, very scary, this will also pass away. That kind of looking at the things as they are be very, very fleeting. They're not, they're ephemeral, they keep changing. If that kind of attitude the mind develops, it is right perception of anicca, then your mindset will change. Then your attachment to something, it will change. The craving will change into intelligence. So in that way, there are some 10 kinds of perception Buddha talks about in this Girimananda Sutta. That of course, I'll again come to it little later. Now coming to the other cure, the medical cures, other non-right view, or say the cures that are available in the world, the medical world, or in the therapeutic world, in your behavioral therapy, or the medical world, the different cures that are available that we will see. And then we will see the religious therapies, the religious cures for this so-called anxiety and depression. And then we will come to our right view cures or the right view solutions. So what is the difference between this, say, the religious cures and these right view solutions? The religious cures are dependent on the some religious atheist, some theistic ideas. So how some of those ideas also will help in handling anxiety and depression to some extent. How these behavioral therapy or the medical therapeutical systems, how they can help us to handle anxiety and depression to some extent. And what are the limitations of these things also? What are the limitations of the cures of the medical or these therapeutical systems? That also we will see. And also we will see the limitations of the some religious systems, the religious cures. And of course, its scope, the scope of the religious cures, both its say its impact and also its limitations, its effect and its limitations, and also the right to solutions. Those things. So we will see the cures in these three headings. Under these three headings, we will see. So now let us come to these medical, say, therapeutic cures. Of course, very easy, very general medical therapy, medical therapeutic system is, medical cure is giving some anti-anxiety drugs, or for depression, anti-depression drugs, antidepressants. There, of course, there are again some chemicals. When the mind is full of some negative thoughts, the negative thoughts like fears and say worries, they produce, let us say, anxiety, and of course they produce some negative chemicals. To counter them, they give some chemicals, the form of antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs. So to some extent, they fight. Again, one extreme is fought with the other extreme. So what happens? Then the mind may become dull in this fight, in this conflict of these two different chemicals. You will be under the grip of these chemicals, and you will be completely controlled by these chemicals, and the mind may become dull and may become, or it will become temporary also. The effect of the chemicals, the effect of these drugs may be temporary also, and it may be, and the mind may become dull also, and it may have some other negative or the side effects also. It may affect some other internal organ, these chemicals that you take in the form of drugs or antidepressants or whatever you call. But temporarily it works. If the case is too severe, if the anxiety case is too severe, or the depression case is too severe, then there is no other shortcut. We have to go for these these powerful drugs or chemicals, which will calm down your mind at least to some extent, though with some side effects. If you always look for some permanent solution, then the mind may not be strong enough to work on this permanent solution. or to change your behavior, change your attitude, change your mindset, change your say habit. So all these things, it requires some patience, some time, and so many other factors. So by that time, the mind will completely go uncontrolled, and the mind will be completely filled with this anxiety and depression problems, disorders. Then one may die also. Then it may be very difficult to take up any other, say, other kinds of relatively permanent techniques. So in such cases, definitely, of course, this kind of treatment, this kind of say medication is a must. Medication is required. Of course, then in the medication, they give the different kinds of counseling, different kinds of behavioral therapy also. Different kinds of behavioral therapy also, in addition to the medicines, in addition to counseling. Like say there is something called cognitive behavioral therapy. They try to change your perception. Of course, to some extent it will help. There's something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And of course, they teach some kinds of meditations. That again, I will discuss a little later about this mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. They have taken a few things from this this right view solutions also. They have taken this mindfulness, and based on that mindfulness, they can treat the patients and they can change the behavior of the patient to some extent. And of course, it's also working. So in that way, this kind of therapeutic systems, different kinds of therapies, they'll help in handling anxiety and this depression to some extent. And of course, again, connecting oneself with the nature, like involving in some gardening, handling the plants and the soil, being in the nature, being with water, being say pure fresh air, fresh water, and this the bioenergy, the farm where this lot of this plants and trees are there, such place, and visiting new places, being in a new place, say some say of course where you get fresh air, fresh water, fresh food, and all these things. Changing the food, if you are following this, if you are eating a lot of junk food, highly fried or boiled, say highly fried oil, junk food, what kind of food if you want to start taking some fresh foods, where there is a lot of what is called the life force in the foods, the water, the air. Then again, of course, it will again increase the life force in the body, and it will soften a lot of say the chemicals that are produced because of the stress and tension inside the body, and again it will have an impact on the mind also. So and also some kind of other extraneous factors, like some say like music, like say some kind of some physical work, some exercises, yoga. There are different kinds of yoga, especially to handle this kind of say stress. There are some asanas which are specifically for this handling the stress and anxiety. Of course, they have their own limitations, but still many of them will work. And there are so many other healing systems, or say alternate medical systems. Like there are some like Ayurveda, again the different chemicals derived from the plant origin, relatively fresh, relatively wholesome, relatively holistic. So that kind of systems also will have some impact on the mind. So they heal, and yoga systems and the breathing techniques like pranayama and all, they too have some kind of deep breathing and all. It will calm down the mind to some extent. Proper breathing, balanced breathing also will calm down the mind to some extent. And also other say healing systems, healing techniques like your Reiki or pranic healing. So many systems have come up nowadays. Magnetotherapy, so it will balance magnetic waves in the body, and again it will have some impact on the magnetic waves of the brain also. To some extent, it will calm down your mind. I can list hundreds of, say, therapeutic systems, curative techniques to handle this anxiety and depression, which are, say, rooted in this modern, say, allopathy, or from the ancient, say, medical systems, or say some, say, modified yogic systems or modified healing systems like this kind of Reiki or yoga or pranayama, or even some physical workout also, walking also, some doing some physical work. Always people who are not using their body and limbs or unaware that they have hands, body and legs and all these things. Simply they are into this thinking and only planning and thinking. Such people, they end up in worrying and say negative thinking also. So when they start using their body, then they become the mind will learn how to be with the body, the mind body coordination they will get, and again that will keep away the negative thoughts to great extent. The negative thoughts like fear, anxiety, and then anxiety is depression also. In that way, there are so many ways people try to handle this anxiety and depression. And a routine. In this behavioral therapy, they insist on some kind of routine every day, follow a few things regularly at a specific time. Then the mind will come out of the negative thinking pattern because you're addicted to that. When you are busy in some routine activities, then the mind will be free from that negative thinking routine because now it is say, busy in some positive daily routine. Okay, so those things we will see in the religious approaches, the different religious techniques or the religious approach to handle anxiety and depression. So in that way, of course, now people they travel to different places just for the sake of stress busting or living from some anxiety, depression. That also works in some cases. Those who are having a lot of money, they can travel wherever they want, and just they can relieve from the stress and anxiety. And some people they simply change the food, they start liking, they start taking the food that they really like, and they start having a change in the different say impulses in the form of taste, in the form of sounds, in the form of smells, in the form of visible objects. The change in these things, the impulses, the extraneous impulses, if you change those things by going to different places, by simply changing them, by changing the association. So then automatically, to some extent, they will help you to come out of anxiety and depression. They are relatively permanent when compared to this antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs. This kind of changing the sense impressions, some novels, some new sense impressions, and changing the activities, changing the association, changing the place. So they help to some extent to come out of anxiety and depression, and changing these the balance in the four elements of the body also, and changing the energy levels, changing the life force levels of the body, the form of pranic healing, the form of pranayama and breathing techniques, the form of yoga, the form of foods. So these things also will change. Our thinking pattern, our negative thinking will change, and they also calm down the mind. Relatively better than your antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs. Then coming to the religious techniques, the religious approach to handle this anxiety and depression. Actually, nowadays, especially in 21st century, they say the religions are losing grip on the masses and the majority of the people. That's why they say there are so many atheists in the world now, or the atheist number is increasing. In almost all religions, there is some kind of I can say some kind of hierarchy the mutual dependence, or some kind of one listening to the other based on their enlightenment or their knowledge or their wisdom. Based on that, in almost all religions, whether it is Indian religions or Abrahamic religions or any religion for that matter, some kind of hierarchy, some kind of order used to be there. Of course, in all religions, it is still there. So that gives some kind of protection, some kind of say, let go. One need not take all his problems on his shoulders only. There are a few people who towards whom he can simply dependent upon. He can pass on his problems. So in that way, some order was there in all the religions. But now, because of our education system, because of our lifestyle now, each and every person, he thinks independently. He tries to be more and more individualistic. That is the norm of the world. We can't simply hate it, or we can't simply appreciate it. It has its own limitation. It has its own plus and minus. This kind of lifestyle. But still, who are into the hold of different religions in a very humble way, in a very faithful way, in a very respectful way. They have relatively lesser levels of anxiety, lesser levels of stress, lesser levels of depression in any religion. And of course, even the religions and the religious leaders and their power is also actually it's getting weakened because of the materialistic approach of the today's world. Even the true essence and the true spirit of all religions, they're not as powerful as maybe a few decades back, because the very inclination towards say that religions and the enlightenment through religions that has weakened, that has become, say, that has reduced. That's why now there is a fear among the people about the so-called religious leaders also, and to depend on them also, because of their unauthoritativeness, because of their say weaknesses. So-called religious leaders who are supposed to handle this kind of mental issues of the people in the name of religion, in the name of spirituality. They themselves have become weak. So the people have that kind of psychosis that it's not a good idea to depend on the religion. That is increasing. I don't say that it's completely gone, but that is increasing. The fear psychosis, even in the religious leaders, that is increasing. But still, if in some places, in some say sects or in some organizations, or some group, if it's still there, then in such places there is lesser anxiety, there is lesser depression. And what are the different techniques that they follow, those religious sects or in these religious orders? They follow like prayers. It is completely submitting your will to something or somebody who is superior, to the deity or the scriptures or some knowledge or the leader or the guru or the say any kind of master or the senior in that order. So they simply say they submit their will, and they start indulging in the prayers or in some japas, or repeatedly telling the same name, by visualizing or by surrendering to the quality of that person whom you are visualizing, or the deity, or that say particular mantra, repeatedly chanting some mantra. Even those mantras, because of the vibrations of the mantras, it will again calm down the mind. It will again balance the negative vibrations of the mind with these positive vibrations. And this dissolving the ego by submitting one's will, that will also calm down a lot of friction, lot of conflict, lot of say stress. Ego creates a lot of stress because ego has to fight with say the failure, or say what you are not getting. With that, the ego has to fight, and that kind of too much success oriented, too much achievement oriented, again out of will, or again out of ego. So that will dissolve, at least to that extent, at least for some time. So then it will relieve a lot of stress, it will relieve your mind from a lot of anxiety and depression. You reach some kind of freeness, because when the ego is there, then uh, tightness will be there, rigidness will be there. I am somebody, that kind of attitude is there. But ego gone, that nobodiness comes, that nothingness comes. From that nothingness, to some extent, you experience freeness. The nothingness only one will experience freeness. So that will also reduce a lot of anxiety and depression. So to encourage that kind of submission, to encourage that kind of faith, to encourage that kind of freeing oneself from that rigid ego, people have designed so many religious techniques, like these prayers, like these different kinds of ceremonies, rituals, different kinds of chantings, different kinds of say japas, mantras, different kinds of mantras. By repeatedly chant or say confession in front of religious leader, just submitting the ego, submitting one's own will, accepting the failures, letting go. So the modern day mantras like letting go, this also will change. What next? So these are the modern day mantras. But the religious mantras, there are so many religious, some sounds are there, some syllables are there. So the names of some deities are there, or some prayers are there. So all these things repetitively you do with some faith, with some submission of the will, submission of the ego. That will also relieve you from a lot of depression, anxiety, which are rooted in the fear and say worry. So once you confess, once you submit your ego or will, then that attachment, that ego, that strong craving, it will go away. Then you experience some emptiness, and then you get relieved from that anxiety and depression. Sometime back, one girl and she came with these suicidal thoughts, with this lot of anxiety and depression. I could see a lot of rigid ego. They don't want to give up. Whatever ideology they have, whatever say confidence, overconfidence, which is some kind of, it's not exactly arrogance also, it's some kind of overconfidence. Because of that overconfidence, they are holding on to some aspect which is very, very, say, useless, thinking it as me. They can't give it up. And that strong attachment is the main reason why people end up in a lot of anxiety and depression. There's no need of strong attachment to any damn thing. Any strong attachment leads to extremities. Extremeness comes from this strong attachment of something you think of yourself. I am very intelligent. I am very smart. I am very say attractive. I am very good. Even the goodness ego, if you are strongly holding on to it, if somebody says you are bad, then gone. You develop a lot of tension, anxiety, stress. So that way, a strong attachment to any damn thing that leads to anxiety, that leads to fears, that leads to say worries. So in that way, this kind of religious techniques where unknowingly you are coming out of that strong attachment. It requires, of course, a little bit of innocence, a little bit of submissiveness, a little bit of faith, a little bit of say respect towards the superior person who has traveled a little far in that path. That is very much required. Of course, that order is actually is losing its strength nowadays. I can see that hierarchical order in any system, in any school, in any organization, in any sect, or in any group that is lacking because of this independent, individualistic thinking that is becoming superior. So, of course, in some cases, if it works, one can definitely make use of these different religious techniques to handle this kind of ego-centered anxiety and depression. And now coming to this last aspect, this right view solutions, the right view approach to handle this anxiety and depression. The right view approach, the mantra is the moderation. Moderation is the mantra in this right view approach. Right view starts from this middle path and moderation and mindfulness in a way. It's all the ability of the mind to balance the things. It's the ability of the mind to balance the four elements of the body, balance the four components of the mind. It's your ability, your skillfulness, your say understanding to come to this moderation, to come to this balance. That is what is the right view approach. If you have too much anxiety, then if you have this moderating technique, moderating skillfulness, then you understand. So this is going extreme. Let me navigate. Let me take the other way. Let me just turn in the other direction. If you are going in the other direction in a too extreme way, too much, then your mind will tell this is becoming extreme. Now I have to come to the means. I have to avoid the extremes. I have to come to the means. That kind of skillfulness, that kind of ability of the mind to come to the balance, to come to the moderation. That is what is called the right view approach. And of course, moderation is mantra, but this is not so easy. The mind has to be trained in a very, very authoritative way to come to this moderation, to come to the means. Understanding this is extreme, that itself requires some mental training. Your mindset has to be changed. Your mental skillfulness has to be changed. And to establish in the means, and again understanding this is means, this is extreme. So that kind of skillfulness of the mind is very, very important. To develop that kind of skillfulness, to establish in that moderation, to establish in the moderation, you should be mindful, you should be alert, you should be mindful. Calmly alert, not with some tension, you should be alert. With calmness, you should be alert. And that is what is called mindfulness. And to achieve that, you should learn this the middle path approach, the different the factors of the middle path approach, like knowing the Four Noble Truths. That means the craving is the cause of suffering, the giving or working or giving up, that is the cause of happiness. And then the dependent origination, everything is rooted in the ignorance of not knowing the four faculties of the mind, not developing the four faculties of the mind. And the law of action and reaction, law of cause and effect. Whatever I want, the same thing I should give. What I give, the same I get back. That's why if I want something, I should learn to give that particular thing. So that kind of knowledge of the action, the law of action and reaction, the law of cause and effect, that understanding we should develop. In addition to that, to develop these different kinds of right understanding and also the different kinds of perception that the chanting, the beginning of the today's discourse, particular chanting, there are so many kinds of right perception about the body, perception about the ego, perception about how to let go the things, perception about what is permanent, what is not permanent, what is changing, what is not changing, what is beautiful, what is not beautiful, what is soul, what is not soul, what is permanent, what is not permanent in ourselves, what has to be given up, what has to be attached. Pemato jayati sopo, pemato jayati bayam, pemato vipamuchantu, atti sopo kuto bayam. That's what Buddha says at one circumstance. Even with this prema, so-called love, people use this word love in a very, very, in an emotional way, not with in an intelligent way. They use the word love, but this very love, so-called love, tema that they are talking about. It may lead to attachment. It may lead to different kinds of attachment. In the very name of love, people get trapped into the attachment. And from that attachment only, from that love only, Jayati Soko, the worry comes. Bhaya, fear comes. Jayati Bhaya, fear. Different kinds of attachment, which comes again in the name of, again in the appearance of say love. It comes in a beautiful way as love, but one gets trapped into this attachment, and from there only the worry and the fear starts. The worry and the fear, they are the root cause of anxiety. And once you are free from this attachment, free from this love, free from this attachment, then where is fear? Where is love? Where is worry? And then the worry is not there. Then where is fear? That's what is the meaning of this verse, Gatha, this verse. So in that way, understanding the feelings, the name of love, many people think it is very positive feeling, but when you correctly understand it, it is the root of so many problems. And how to substitute this negative feeling with the positive feeling? Which are the positive feelings? The four positive feelings like metta, karuna, mudita, upekta, loving kindness, the compassion, the appreciation, the appreciative joy, and finally the upekta, bringing the mind, settling the mind in that equanimity, that emptiness, in that nothingness, in the gap, in the silence, in that stability. That is what is the mind training with regard to the feelings. Correctly understanding the negative feelings, positive feelings, and practicing and progressing in the positive feelings, and finally establishing, settling in that equanimity, settling in that stability, settling in that emptiness, settling in that the gap of positive feelings and negative feelings. Whatever may be the feeling, gap of it, nothingness, how to establish. That's what one should learn. Then you are into this right way. Then you are progressing in right way. Then you are settling and establishing in that equanimity or in that emptiness. And from there, all solutions. From there, all peace you'll get. From there, all the ability to understand the extremes like anxiety and depression. That idea you will get. And from there only, you will learn how to establish the means. Establishing the equanimity. From there only you will get. So in that way, thorough understanding of these wholesome feelings, how they can effectively annihilate or remove or overtake the negative feelings like anger, fear, anxiety, depression. All these are negative feelings. By cultivating the positive feelings, authoritative, very holistic, very wholesome positive feelings like loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, and equanimity. How it will help me to establish in that equanimity, that say stability, in that balance of the mind, in that skillful balance of the mind. It's again a training. It's not just one simple word. Loving kindness is not a simple. It's a word, of course, but it requires a lot of training of the mind to establish in that loving kindness, that metta, that friendliness, that universal love. In karuna, in that compassion also, mind requires thorough training. In appreciative joy, in mudita also, mind requires thorough training. Not simply by hearing this word, I can completely learn this technique of appreciative joy, which is the opposite of jealousy. Jealousy or this possessiveness comes from measuring. Always we compare, we relate, we judge so many things. We compare this with that, we compare this person with that person, we compare myself with other person. So many things which we start comparing. My intelligence with the person who is next to me, my success with the person next to me, my possessions with the person next to me. We start comparing so many things. My ability, previous ability with today's ability, comparing my today's ability with the future ability, comparing myself with my friend, my boss, my wife, my children, my parents, with everyone we compare, we judge, we simply create a lot of problems. Comparing is the biggest problem for anxiety and stress. to step back from this comparing, to establish in stability and equanimity and nothingness. So this practice of this Acharya without recovery, the wholesome feelings practice of these things, authoritative. As a routine also you can do that, and the very mentality, the mindset will change towards the wholesome feelings. What exactly is the wholesome feelings one can understand. And that is the right view approach. The same way, developing the right confidence levels by this, what is called this Chanda, Virya, Chitta, Vimamsa, the Pada. Very authoritative, just like these wholesome feelings. These wholesome confidence building techniques also one should practice and authoritatively training them as an everyday routine. Then your confidence levels will remain at the optimum, at the best, and there you establish that absolute, the best confidence levels, and the stable confidence levels you will achieve. That also help you to establish that equanimity. That is your platform. That is on which you have to stand, and then you should look at the world. In the same way, the right perceptions, like what is beautiful, what is not beautiful, what is permanent, what is not permanent, what is skillful, what is not skillful, what is happiness, what is not happiness, what is suffering, what is not suffering. So that thorough understanding of the things through right knowledge, through right view, through right understanding, through right analysis, that will also help you to establish in that equanimity, in that stability, in that nothingness, in that emptiness. From there, from that platform, you can function very well in the world. You can handle this negative feelings or negative thoughts of the mind, like anxiety, like depression, the root factors, defilements, fear, jealousy, and worry. They're again rooted in attachment, craving. All these things you correctly understand, you correctly step back from that, you can easily zoom out. By practicing all these things, stepping back and zooming out and look at those things as the third person, even though it is your fear, you can step back and see that your fear, your anxiety as a third person. In that way, if you start knowing these different faculties of the mind, training these different faculties of the mind in an authoritative way. The same way, the awareness, developing awareness through your different, senses, sense awareness, by practicing this coherence or this alignment of the mind and body and this sense awareness, and again go deep into the concentration, the mindfulness and concentration to develop again by stepping back and zooming out. The religious techniques are zooming in, surrendering, zooming in. These right view techniques are zooming out, stepping back and zooming out, just like people can be seen from the top of the hill. So you are stepping back and you are zooming out, and you see that like it's all like fun. It's all like that. You are separate, and all this nonsense, the game of the thoughts, the game of the feelings, they are separate. I am separate. That kind of authoritative wisdom you develop when you learn this art of stepping back and zooming out, look at the things as they are, which is can be again practiced with this sense awareness, with different kinds of meditations, different senses, and again establish in the silence between the sounds, the gap between the breaths, the gap between the sensations, the gap between the tastes and smells. So in that way, you establish in that gap, you establish by developing that sensitivity to know all kinds of tastes, all kinds of smells, all kinds of sounds, all kinds of sensations, all kinds of thoughts, being the gap of the thoughts. Then the thoughts, whether it is negative thought or positive thought, it looks very silly for you. It will not affect you. So that kind of establishing in the silence, that gap, in that emptiness, and stabilizing yourself, and establishing in that equanimity, that is what is called. That is the way to even liberation. That is the way to the enlightenment. And that is the way to be peaceful, be skillful, be objective, be stable, be, say, uh, tactful in avoiding the extreme or in handling the extreme and coming to the means. So that is what is called the right view solutions. And for that, this right view meditation courses that we have designed from next month, we are planning in a very authoritative, very systematic, very disciplined way. In the last trustees meeting, we have finalized. There will be 4 courses of 4 days to handle these 4 faculties of the mind and 4 elements of the body. And in a very disciplined way, those things will be there. In a very committed way. Everybody will participate in that. And I want all of you to establish in this right view approach. Then all other approaches, you will definitely will find them, say, I can say secondary. I can't say inferior. I can say they are secondary to handle anxiety and this depression. You can handle each and every thought. You can handle each and every sensation, each and every pain, each and every stress in a very, very skillful way. Then handling anxiety and depression becomes very, very easy once you enter into this right view approach, where it is a stepping back approach, an objective approach, looking at the things as they are approach, very skillful, very authoritative way by thoroughly understanding the 4 faculties, the different plus and minus of the 4 faculties, and transcending all the plus and minus of these 4 faculties, establishing in that equanimity, in that stability, in that emptiness, in that gap, in that silence. So, and that's very, very authoritative, very, very powerful way of handling all these kinds of negative thoughts and negative emotions and negative feelings, which are simply destroying the human minds in the present world. So we don't have much time. I can tell about different cures and causes of this thing, about these negative thoughts and mental issues like this, anxiety and depression, and the cures, different kinds of cures, whether it is medical or behavioral, whether it is religious, even all these things. In fact, we can discuss hours and hours, but that is not the objective of this talk. The objective of this talk is to motivate you, encourage you, or inspire you about the powerful approach of the right view. Because the world is becoming independent and individual. You have to stand on your feet. You have to stand on your very stable platform of that equanimity, of that nothingness, of that emptiness. And from there, if you play your role, then playing with your thoughts, understanding your thoughts, emotions, your negative and positive feelings, like your anxiety, stress, depression, fear, worry, all these things, attachment, craving, all these things becomes very, very easy. Just like a person, as I used to say, say who is watching some ants, simply they are fighting for one, say, sugar cube. There are so many sugar cubes, just maybe they go some, say, some 4 or 5 inches away from that particular place, but some 2-3 ants are fighting for one sugar cube. They don't have the ability to either to feel or either to smell the sugar cubes. They will little away from that. So simply they fight. Same way, all these negative thoughts, all these positive thoughts, all these human emotions, conflicts, everything you can zoom out and you can see. Just like you can zoom out and you can see the conflict of these ants. You can zoom out from your own thoughts, emotions, people around you, and all these emotionalities, all these intellectualities, all these fights and conflicts. You can zoom out and see, because you have established in that equanimity, in that stability, in that silence, in that gap, in that emptiness. By training your mind how to step back and zoom out. That is the most authoritative. So that I want to encourage, I want to take it more aggressiveness. So that we have designed, be in touch with, again, we have designed some kind of the order and system in our among our coordinators and our trustees also, all the coordinators, all the meditators who are into this path, already into this path, and those who are listening to this talk, all of you understand this importance of this right view approach. Start working on it with more enthusiasm, higher spirit, higher motivation. Help yourself, help others, because this century will definitely be affected by these problems, or at least a few more decades. The world has to face these problems. To handle these problems, these mental health issues, like anxiety, depression, and so many other factors related to this, other aspects related to this. So effectively, if you want to handle and if you want to help the people in the best possible way, this is the way. Right view approach is the way. If you are clear with this, if you are happy with this, work confidently, work with all your effort, with all your skillfulness. See that the next 4 batches, they should be enrolled, and next maybe after 15 days we are having level 2, and of course from next month we are going to have this very systematic approach to all these 4 levels of developing this right view, understanding the 4 faculties of the mind, elements of the body. Then you see authoritatively you can handle all these mental health issues. Okay, so with that we will conclude, and if you have some questions, you can ask some questions, and then we conclude with a small chant. Girimananda Sutta. Girimananda Sutta. So it is like it's not Garima Sutta, it's Girimananda Sutta. I think it should be in Anguttara Nikaya. You just type in the internet Girimananda Sutta, you will get it. No need to worry. Vandana Banteji, how to make our near and dear one realize that ego is their problem, which everyone should go around them. See, always the problem with some of our intellectuals, some of our meditators, they see ego in others. Ego in others is the reflection of our ego, that's all. The other's ego is the mirror image of our ego. If you are seeing the ego, you understand your ego and learn all these different ways and means to fix your ego. Cannot mind their say behavior once your ego is fixed. If we get anxiety for small things, genetically is it possible to reverse it with our effort? Genetically, it's of the genes to say like it's the blood or it's the genes, it's very rigidly it is there with us. So to come out of this, our efforts also, our counter activities also, our counter strategies also should be very powerful, very effective. So for that, you have to have a lot of motivation, lot of willpower, lot of enthusiasm to practice its counter strategies. So like say regular mindfulness practice, regular meditation practice, regular positive thinking, or this right view thinking techniques, right perception techniques, right feelings techniques, right confidence building techniques. Again and again, repetitively, you have to keep practicing to come out of this genetic or this say which are very rigidly, which are very tightly there in our say in our blood, in our genes. Means then your practice to change it, to counter it. The strategies and the practice also should be very say effective, very powerful, very authoritative, very regular kinds of anxiety. And of course, right association, right order, right support, right Kalyana Mitra, right association of the Kalyana, right group. All these things are very effective. Either to fall in the wrong trap, run, or the negative feelings, the negative association, wrong association is the main cause to come to the say the positive side, positive. Uh, let us say to come out of this kind of negative this, mental issues like anxiety and depression. Then the right group with this right knowledge, with this say right friends, right this Kalyana Mitras. So their association is very, very, very crucial. That is very powerful also. To erase a line on water, it is very in a second it will disappear. To erase say one pencil mark, it is easy, just with an eraser you can remove. To erase one pen mark, maybe with some difficulty you can remove. To erase one line on which is say on a stone, you carve one line and if you remove it, if you erase it, it takes more time. So this genetic say this hereditary this congenital say anxiety issues, they are like deep rooted, like the line on a rock. It's on yeah, something like that. So then you have to make some so you have to make more efforts to remove that kind of mark from the mind. You have to practice repeatedly with right association, with the right dedication, then one can. But that is the beauty of the human life, you see. You should learn to give the priority to this, developing the mind. And again and again, I used to tell, you may be having 1 million other responsibilities for the sake of it. It's all there, of course, it should be there. But if you give sufficient priority to this, then all other things will follow it up. They will follow this right view and right mind, happy mind, peaceful mind. Everything we earn, we do what for? For happiness only. Everything we get, but we don't have inner joy. What is the use of getting all these things? It's like giving priority to this solution I can suggest at this juncture to handle these genetically rooted anxiety issues. This is one stupid question. Say this while one reciprocation from the other. Or you should have patience to see that work on it. That's how you are developing your patience. That's how you are developing your metta. That's how you are developing your equanimity. That's how you are developing all your punya, kriyas, all the formulas. It depends on how repeatedly you are doing it. Once it accumulates, once it reaches some threshold, then only you start getting its consequences, its counter reaction. Say if you are say trying to burn something, you are trying to light something, ignite something. So in some rainy season, let us say, you have to work several times. You have to put some paper, some sticks, so many things, and you have to create some kind of warmth in this burning material. Then if you ignite it, then it will burn. Until then, you have to create that conditioning, that kind of conditions. Same thing with, if you want to get the reciprocation from the external world, you have to create that condition. In one instance, you want the entire world to follow you, to surrender to you, to prize you as a great person. That will not happen. To become Bodhisattva, to become Buddha, it's not one life achievement. It is developing all these forms, lives after lives after lives. Then that reciprocation comes. Overnight it will not happen. Okay, so we'll conclude with small chapter. So, as I told, there are so many others say, repeated questions. So again and again, it will not happen. Change in the mind. Buddha says 1 million battles or 1,000 battles. With 1,000 soldiers, if you fight repeatedly and if you win, that may be easy when compared to handling your own negative thoughts, handling your own mind, developing the right view. But one should not give up. Even each and every effort, each and every say small effort, that is good enough to give you a lot of happiness in progressing in this right way, in developing these forms, developing this punya, in developing these right virtues, the right feelings, the right confidence, the right awareness, the right perceptions of the mind. Each and every small thing also will liberate you to some extent. But to reach the ultimate goal, it may take long time. But still, you can enjoy this very path bit by bit. Each and every step you can enjoy. So start noting that joy. Start noting that joy of equanimity, joy of nothingness, joy of emptiness, or joy of that very step, joy of that very positive step. Start appreciating it and progressing. Sooner or later, you can reach the ultimate goal also. And in that very path itself, the life is there. The true life is there. True joy is there. So that is the power of this right view approach. So start working on yourself to establish in this right view. Start helping others also to establish in this right view. And automatically, your understanding of right view, your establishing in the right view becomes more and more firm, more and more deeper, becomes deeper. You are established. That is the two-pronged approach, helping others to establish in right view and practicing myself all these techniques with the right association. In this two-pronged approach, if you go ahead, then success is yours. So with that, so we will conclude with one small chant. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sada swati bhavantu te sukhi bhave yanni dukho aham nicha aham viya idacha me sukhi hontu ma jata chatavedino ma vigammante dhamme satta hontu sukhi sada ato parancharajesu chakkavale sujantano sadhu sadhu. So have this little bit of sense of humor also, sense of let go, sense of patience, sense of submitting the will, submitting the ego. So appreciating, not becoming jealous, not comparing, not judging, just working on these four faculties of the mind. Keep busy in your goal, keep busy in your goal-oriented actions. So at this juncture, I think these tips keep in your mind to handle anxiety and depression, and the root cause for these things like fear, worries, attachment, cravings. You can handle these things. Keep focused. Then keep yourself busy. Then there is no time for you to judge with others, to compare yourself with others. And you keep yourself busy in your goal-oriented actions. And then keep this always at the back of your mind. I want to establish this right view, and these are the different ways and means to establish this right view. Now, this is the right group to get support to establish the right view. In these things you keep in the back of your mind, then definitely you can come out of all these negative thought processes, thought patterns, and you can establish that equanimity and stability, which is very, very authoritative way of leading a happy life. Okay. May all of you be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May all beings also be happy, healthy, and peaceful.